Let me tell you something about a man's silence. Just because he's quiet doesn't mean he's moved on. Just because he's not calling doesn't mean he's not thinking. Doesn't mean he's not thinking. And just because he's acting unbothered doesn't mean he doesn't feel bothered, doesn't mean he doesn't feel bothered, See, women expresses emotions outwardly. Men, we process them internally. When a man goes quiet, a lot of times it's not peace, it's pride. It's ego wrestling with emotion. It's him trying to convince himself he doesn't care, while his mind keeps replaying your laugh, your conversations, your energy. Silence doesn't mean he's over you. That's the first thing you need to understand before you let your mind create stories that aren't true. Just because his phone isn't lighting up with your name, just because the good morning text stopped, just because the conversations feel distant or non-existent, that does not automatically mean his feelings disappeared. Sometimes silence isn't the absence of emotion. Sometimes it's the presence of emotion. Sometimes it's the presence of too much emotion that he doesn't know how to handle. You have to understand that men and women often process emotional pain differently. When a woman feels something, she usually talks it out. She calls her friends. She replays the situation. She expresses. A man, on the other hand, tends to retreat. He pulls back into himself. He tries to think his way through what he's feeling instead of speaking his way through it. And in that quiet space, there's often a storm going on that you can't see. Pride is fighting vulnerability. Ego is wrestling with attachment. Logic is trying to overpower emotion. And while you're interpreting silence as indifference, he may be fighting an internal battle he doesn't even fully understand. Silence can mean he's confused. It can mean he's confused. It can mean he's hurt. It can mean he's afraid of saying the wrong thing. Sometimes a man goes quiet because he doesn't know how to fix what went wrong. Instead of risking rejection, he chooses distance. Instead of expressing fear, he chooses control. And for some men, control looks like silence. If he doesn't speak, he doesn't have to expose how much he cares. If he doesn't reach out, he doesn't risk hearing that you've moved on. Silence becomes his shield. You also have to consider this. When a real connection has existed, it doesn't just vanish. Men don't easily forget how a woman made them feel. They might try to distract themselves. They might stay busy. They might act unbothered in public. But emotions don't shut off like a switch. If you brought peace into his life, if you supported him, if you understood him in a way others didn't, that imprint doesn't disappear just because the communication stopped. Memory is powerful. Feeling is powerful. And quiet moments, especially at night, tend to bring those memories right back to the surface. A lot of times, silence is a man's way of regaining balance. If he felt overwhelmed, if things were moving too fast, if he sensed expectations he wasn't ready to meet, his instinct may have been to create space. Not necessarily because he wanted to lose you, but because he didn't want to fail you. Instead of saying, "I'm scared I can't give you what you need," he says nothing at all, and that nothing can feel loud. It can feel like rejection. But sometimes it's just fear wearing a mask. Now, does silence always mean he's thinking about you? Not in every situation. But when there was depth, when there was genuine emotion, silence usually carries weight. It means he's processing. It means he's reflecting. It means he's trying to figure out where you fit in his future and whether he has the courage to step up. And during that process, he may check your social media. He may wonder who you were with. He may replay conversations in his head. He may even draft messages he never sends. What the mistake many women make is assuming that silence requires chasing. They think if he cared, he would immediately speak. If he loved me, he would call. If I mattered, he wouldn't be quiet. But sometimes a man cares deeply and still goes silent because he doesn't know how to communicate that care properly. Emotional intelligence is not equally developed in everyone. Some men were never taught how to express vulnerability. They were taught to suppress, to endure, to handle things alone. So when feelings become intense, their instinct is not connection, it's withdrawal. What you must not do is let his silence convince you to lower your standards or question your worth. His quiet is about his capacity, not your value. If you showed up authentically, if you communicated honestly, if you respected yourself, then you did your part. Silence does not rewrite your significance. It only reveals his current emotional limitations. And here's something powerful to remember. Silence creates space, and space creates clarity. In that quiet, he has time to realize what your presence meant. He has time to compare. He has time to feel the absence. When you are no longer constantly available, when your energy is no longer easily accessed, it becomes noticeable. What was once familiar becomes missed, and sometimes it takes that distance for him to fully understand what he had. But regardless of what he's thinking, your strength is in how you respond. You don't break your composure. You don't send 10 messages trying to force reassurance. You don't beg for clarity from someone who chose quiet over mirror. Communication. You maintain dignity. You continue growing. You keep moving forward. Because whether he speaks again or not, your value remains intact. Silence doesn't mean he's over you. It might mean he's processing you. It might mean he's missing you. It might mean he's missing you. It might mean he's wrestling with his own fears and pride. And if you truly left an impact, you don't need constant noise to confirm it. Real connection echoes in quiet places. The key is to trust your worth enough not to chase the silence, but to let it reveal the truth over time. Men process emotion internally in ways that often confuse the women who care about them. When something emotional happens, an argument, distance, rejection, or even deep attachment, a woman's instinct is usually to talk it through. She wants clarity, she wants reassurance, she wants to unpack the situation in real time. A man, however, is more likely to go quiet, not because he doesn't feel, but because he feels more than he knows how to express. His first response is often retreat, not conversation. From a young age, many men are conditioned to suppress emotional expression. They're taught to be strong, to man up, to handle things on their own. Vulnerability is rarely rewarded in boys the way resilience is. So as they grow into men, their emotional processing becomes private. When they feel hurt, they don't always say, "That hurt me." When they feel insecure, they don't easily admit fear. Instead, they analyze internally. They think, they replay, they sit with it alone. And that internal processing can look like indifference when it's actually intensity. When conflict arises in a relationship, a woman may want immediate discussion. She wants to clear the air. But a man may need time to understand what he's even feeling. He might not have the language for it yet. He might know he's upset, but not know whether it's anger, disappointment, fear, or shame. Instead of saying the wrong thing, he chooses silence. That silence is not always distance. Sometimes it's digestion. He is mentally sorting through the event, trying to make sense of his emotional reaction before he brings it to you. There's also pride involved. For many men, emotions feel like exposure. To admit he misses you, that he's hurt, or that he feels uncertain can feel like handing over power. And if he's unsure of where he stands with you, he may hold those feelings inside as a form of self-protection. Internally, he may be thinking about you constantly, replaying your last conversation, wondering if he made a mistake. Externally, he may appear calm, detached, or even unaffected. But the absence of visible emotion does not equal the absence of emotion itself. Men also tend to process through action rather than discussion. When stressed, they may throw themselves into work, hobbies, the gym, or distractions. This isn't necessarily avoidance, it's regulation. Physical activity and productivity can help them manage overwhelming feelings. While you might want to sit down and talk for hours, he might need a long drive or a quiet evening alone to settle his thoughts. That solitude is often where clarity forms for him. Another important aspect of internal processing is timing. A woman may feel something and want resolution immediately. A man may need days to reach the same emotional conclusion. During that time, you might assume he doesn't care because he hasn't spoken. In reality, he may still be working through layers of pride, fear, and reflection. He may be asking himself hard questions. Did I overreact? Did I push her away? Am I ready for what she needs? Those questions often happen silently. This internal style can create misunderstandings. A woman might interpret as quiet as withdrawal or loss of interest. She may respond by pushing her, rid her, for answers, or pulling away to protect herself. Meanwhile, he may still be processing and feel overwhelmed by the pressure to respond before he's ready. The more he feels rushed, the more he may retreat. It becomes a cycle where both people feel disconnected, even though both are feeling deeply. It's also important to understand that men often compartmentalize emotions. They can place feelings in a mental box while they focus on responsibilities. That doesn't mean the box disappears. It simply means they choose when to open it. Late at night, during quiet moments, or when something reminds them of you, those emotions resurface. They may not broadcast it, but they feel it. They may miss you and never say it. They may regret something and never admit it. Internal processing means much of their emotional life happens beneath the surface. However, internal processing has limits. If a man never learns to eventually communicate what he has processed, relationships suffer. Healthy internal reflection should lead to mature conversation. Silence is useful for understanding oneself, but connection requires expression. The key difference is whether his silence is temporary reflection or permanent avoidance. Reflection eventually produces clarity. Avoidance produces distance. For you, understanding that men process emotion internally doesn't mean accepting poor communication. It means recognizing that his first reaction may not mirror yours. If you see silence, don't immediately equate it with apathy. It may simply mean he is sorting through feelings in the only way he has learned. Give space when it's healthy, but also maintain standards that require emotional growth over time. At the end of the day, internal processing is not emotional absence. It is emotional privacy. It is a man sitting alone with thoughts he may not yet have the courage or vocabulary to share. That quiet exterior can be longing, confusion, attachment, and even love. The key is understanding the difference between a man who is internally processing with intention and one who is silently disengaging. One leads back to connection. The other leads away from it. Don't chase the silence. That urge you feel when he goes quiet, that anxiety that creeps in telling you to send one more text, to ask one more question, to just check in one more time, that's emotion reacting to uncertainty. And uncertainty is uncomfortable. When someone you care about suddenly becomes distant, your instinct may be to close the gap. You want reassurance. You want clarity. You want to feel secure again. But chasing silence rarely brings peace. Most of the time, it only shifts the balance of power and drains your dignity. When a man pulls back and you immediately lean forward, you create a dynamic where he controls the emotional temperature of the relationship. His silence sets the tone, and your reaction reinforces it. The more he withdraws, the more you pursue. The more you pursue, 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 the more you pursue. If he is already processing something internally, chasing him forces him further into retreat. What you interpret as fighting for the relationship can feel to him like emotional overwhelm. Silence can mean many things. It can mean he's confused. It can mean he's stressed. It can mean he's unsure about what he wants. But whatever it means, your responsibility is not to fix it. For him, you cannot think for him, decide for him, or force him to communicate before he's ready. When you chase the silence, what you're really doing is trying to manage his emotions for him. And that is a burden you were never meant to carry. There's also something deeper happening when you chase. Often it's fear. Fear of losing him. Fear of being replaced. Fear that if you don't act quickly, the connection will disappear. But real connection doesn't survive because you chased it. It survives because both people choose it. If the only reason he stays engaged is because you keep pulling him back, then you are maintaining something one-sided. And one-sided effort eventually turns into resentment. Chasing silence also sends a subtle message about how you value yourself. When you double text after being ignored, when you explain yourself repeatedly to someone who isn't responding, when you lower your standards just to break the quiet, you communicate that access to you has no cost. You teach him that he can disappear emotionally, and you will still be there, waiting. That removes the natural consequences of distance. Healthy relationships require reciprocity. If he steps back, you step back, not out of manipulation, but out of self-respect. There is strength in restraint. There is power in composure. When you don't react impulsively to his quiet, you give space for truth to surface. If he cares, he will feel the shift. He will notice your absence, the same way you noticed his. If he doesn't respond, then you have clarity without begging for it. Silence, when not chased, reveals intention. It forces him to decide whether he values the connection enough to bridge the gap himself. It's important to understand that not every silence is strategic or meaningful. Sometimes silence is simply disinterest. And chasing someone who is losing interest will not reignite their desire. It will only prolong your confusion. When someone wants to be in your life, they make effort. It may not always be perfect, but it will be present. If effort disappears and you are the only one trying to revive it, you are investing in potential, not reality. Choosing not to chase doesn't mean you don't care. It means you care about yours. Elf 2. It means you recognize that your peace is more important than temporary reassurance. It means you trust that what is meant for you will not require constant pursuit. When you sit back and allow space, you regain emotional balance. You stop reacting and start observing. And observation brings clarity. There's also something transformative that happens when you redirect that energy inward. Instead of staring at your phone, you focus on your growth. Instead of crafting the perfect message to get his attention, you invest in becoming the best version of yourself. Confidence grows in silence too. And when you operate from confidence rather than fear, your entire presence shifts. You are no longer seeking validation. You are embodying value. If he returns, let it be because he chose to, not because you convinced him to. If he speaks, let it be because he felt your absence, not because you filled the void with effort. And if he doesn't return, then his silence has saved you time you would have wasted chasing someone who wasn't aligned with you. Don't chase the silence. Let it do its work. Let it reveal who is willing to show up without being pulled. Let it separate temporary attachment from genuine intention. Your role is not to break the quiet. Your role is to maintain your worth within it. When you stop running after what withdraws, you create space for what truly values you to step forward. And that shift from pursuit to poise is where your real power begins. Your worth isn't tied to his return. That truth may feel difficult to accept when your heart is still attached, when you're replaying memories, when you're wondering whether he'll text, call, or suddenly realize what he lost. It's natural to hope that someone who mattered to you will come back and make things right. But your value as a woman does not rise or fall based on whether a man chooses to re-enter your life. His decision reflects his readiness, his emotional capacity, and his priorities, not your worth. When someone leaves or pulls away, it's easy to internalize it. You start asking yourself questions that chip away at your confidence. Was I too much? Not enough? Too emotional? Too independent? Did I ask for too much clarity? Did I love too deeply? In those moments, rejection can feel personal. But here's the reality. Compatibility and timing play a bigger role in relationships than perfection ever will. A man walking away does not mean you lacked value. It may simply mean he lacked alignment with who you are and what you require. One of the most dangerous traps is tying your validation to his comeback. Waiting for him to return can subtly put your life on pause. You may tell yourself you're just giving it time, but emotionally, you're still anchored to his decision. You may hesitate to fully move forward because part of you believes that if he comes back, it will confirm that you were enough all along. But you were always enough. His return would not create your value. It would only reveal his recognition of it. Say, when you make his return the prize, you unconsciously give him control over your self-esteem. If he comes back, you feel chosen. If he doesn't, you feel rejected. That emotional roller coaster hands your confidence to someone else's actions. Real confidence, however, comes from internal stability. It comes from knowing who you are, regardless of who stays or leaves. It comes from understanding that the right person will not require you to audition for love. There's also a deeper truth to consider. Sometimes a man comes back, not because he grew, but because he's lonely. Sometimes he returns because what's familiar feels safe. Sometimes he reaches out because the dating world didn't offer what he expected. His return does not automatically mean transformation. And if your worth is tied to his reappearance, you might accept less than you deserve just to feel validated. That's how cycles begin. That's how women end up reopening doors that should have stayed closed. Your worth is rooted in your character, your heart, your standards, your resilience. It is reflected in how you show up in relationships, your honesty, your loyalty, your ability to love deeply. None of those qualities disappear because someone couldn't meet you at your level. If anything, the fact that you can love sincerely is evidence of strength, not weakness. The right man will see that as a gift. The wrong man may see it as pressure. But either reaction does not redefine who you are. Let's also acknowledge growth. When someone leaves, it forces reflection. You learn what you tolerated. You learn what you need. You learn where you may have overextended yourself. That growth increases your value, not decreases it. Every experience shapes you into someone wiser and more self-aware. His absence may have been painful, but it likely refined you, and refinement is power. If he returns after you've grown, the question is no longer, am I enough for him? The question becomes, is he aligned with the woman I am now? That shift in perspective changes everything. You are no longer waiting to be chosen. You are evaluating whether he qualifies to re-enter your life. That's what self-worth looks like. It's not arrogance, it's clarity. There is also peace in releasing outcomes. When you detach your worth from his return, you free yourself from constant anticipation. You stop analyzing every notification. You stop interpreting silence as a verdict on your value. You begin living again, fully, presently, confidently, and ironically, when you are no longer seeking validation, you radiate the kind of energy that attracts healthier connections. Whether he comes back or not, your life continues. Your goals still matter. Your joy still matters. Your growth still matters. You are not defined by someone else's decision to stay or leave. Love is mutual selection. It requires two willing participants. If one walks away, it doesn't mean the other was lacking. It simply means alignment was missing. Your worth isn't tied to his return. It never was. If he comes back evolved, consistent, and ready to meet you properly, you can decide from a place of strength. If he doesn't, you still move forward with dignity intact. Either way, you remain valuable. You remain whole. And the woman who understands that her value is constant, regardless of who recognizes it, becomes unstoppable. In the end, remember this: your worth was never up for debate. It was never dependent on a text message, a second chance, or a man realizing what he lost. His return does not crown you valuable, and his absence does not reduce you. You were whole before him. You are whole without him, and you will remain whole regardless of what he decides. If he comes back, let it be to a woman who understands her standards and refuses to shrink. If he doesn't, let him become a lesson, not a life sentence. The real victory is not in being chosen again, it's in choosing yourself every single day. Stand firm in your value. Grow through what you went through, and never let someone else's timing determine your self-worth. Because the woman who knows her value doesn't wait to be validated. She walks forward already certain